Hi everyone, it's Maria from J'adore le papier. I'm on here to do a quick flip through of my latest wine tasting journal. It's actually a very big collector's book. A lot of writing space, not a lot of, actually no digitals except for a couple of definitions and a couple pieces of my art. So it measures 9 across, and the book itself is just at 11 inches with the original spine, which is just under 2 inches. So this is a 1926 British ledger, and in fact you'll see inside that I didn't really want to cover it up too much. So it's basically full of ephemera, but doesn't have a gator mouth. It has about 175 pages, including a couple of tip-ins, and then some extra writing spaces that aren't counted, smaller flip outs and whatnot. You can see that there are a few pages sticking out, but those are just temporary, only because I love how it looks. Years ago, Nick the Booksmith had a journal where all of her pages were splaying out, and just kind of all of the leaves were just discombobbled and disorganized, and I feel like this order book probably was a little bit like that as well. So I just cleaned it up really well, reinforced the inner spine, but it was really strong. So you'll just see a couple pieces of vintage fabric, but I did not cover or seal any parts of the leather, especially on the spine. I did, give it these leather hinges just to strengthen it and to stop it from cracking too much in the corner, but I went ahead and left most of it alone. So all the stains are actually clean stains, dusted, and some of the ledger paper inside from the 1880s have actually been disinfected, but basically everything is original again except for a few print jobs, and this is the reason why I really didn't want to touch it. Beautiful marble end papers and the label from the original British company, so I didn't want to cover it, and in fact I left exposed my antique French linens that I use as bookbinding tape. You might have seen that picture of the spine where I use a French link to bind each of the leaves together. So that's about 80 pages that I've bound together. So in the very beginning, original documents throughout, a few of the pages that are either burned edges and or coffee stained are from Inky Fingers, and I'll be sure to link her below. She has a YouTube, Instagram, and sells on Etsy. 1862 document. This is a story of a winemaker who comes from 3 previous generations of winemakers. His great-grandfather is French and the great-grandmother is Italian, and they started growing vines in the late 1800s. And so recently he's just inherited his great-grandfather's properties, so you'll see those documents. And then this is just a temporary label here. I've given it some photo corners, and in fact you could change out, whatever your favorite type of wine is, or if you have a book plate that you want to replace it with, you could do that. I love these burnt pages of this parchment paper. You'll see some of the embossing right there. Just beautiful. So some of the pieces will fray out or just fall off a little bit, but it adds to the patina. Usually, when you bind your books, you'll add a little bookbinding or adhesive to the spine when you're adding the muslin. But in this case, I didn't want to go too extreme just because I wanted to show off the strings for this 1862 document and show you how it's strung together. So these are all the original strings. And since the property was purchased in 1862, the first time that the family was able to actually sell any of the wines were in the late 1890s. So that's what this document is with the original stamp. Lots of journal space everywhere. Because this contract cover is very, very brittle, I went ahead and attached a grungy piece of French linen as your tab. So grab it here instead of the edges, just so it doesn't continue to fray. Again, on the great-grandmother's side, the family is Italian, but still winemakers, so you'll see a lot of Italian original documents, and I got those from Rachel at Roxy Creations. And in here, I you'll notice throughout the journal I don't paste down or glue down any of the photos, just so that whoever owns this can move them about. So you'll just find them in little tucks. And then again, lots of original checks. This one's a check actually from 1899, so I'm assuming that his great-grandmother left some of the memorabilia from her purchase of her land in Italy, and her vines. School tablet paper, French school tablet paper, vintage. And then another one of the original photos of pickers. And all these original pickers, wine picker photos are from Catherine of French Bayadou. An antique French map. And this actually introduces my favorite section. This map is from Sarah at Petit Papier. Is this fold out here. It's actually a section that I wanted to make of the great-grandmother making a map of their desired terroir that they wanted to own in the southern slope of the French Alps, or the Provence Alps Côte d'Azur region. And of course your definition of terroir, that's the printed one. And I just love this old photo. It's a magazine, but it looks like the family is picnicking closer towards the sea in Provence proper. So that's the family. And then this parchment paper here actually folds out, is giant. It's the huge baker's parchment paper. I can't show it all on camera. Here, let me try to lift it. But it folds open, and it's a handmade map of the hectares divided in the Alps de Haute-Provence and the mountainous region. And the reason I came up with that is because the coffee stains actually mimic a lot of the rugged terrain that you'll see on these territory maps. And because a lot of the winemakers will actually determine what or document what viticulture their farms are on, so the elevation, soil type. And in the Alpes de Haute-Provence, actually, it's limestone with a lot of small to medium-sized stones and pebbles, and very sandy. And in fact, this limestone is perfect soil for growing grapes with great acidity and also sort of that salty bryness. The types of grapes that the grandmother and the great-great-grandparents tried to plant were Pinot Blanc, Chardonnay grapes, Pinot Gris, and Pinot Noir grapes. Definition for each of these plots within this this is probably about 2 to 3 hectares, I'm guessing. And then here's a little bit about the Côte d'Azur, or the Alpes de Haute-Provence, and some actual places. These are pages. This is a page from a Michelin star guide map. So you'll see that folds up. You could do a lot of writing here on the matte side of the page, front and back. So that's my favorite here. And then in the 1930s, the grandmother sought out an American company to help install and improve some of their winemaking equipment. And these are original documents, original blueprints. And that actually coincides with this here. So it's an American document by way of Norway. A French mechanic, actually a school piece of homework in 1941, and I thought maybe someone in 1941, after the equipment was installed, came through the vineyard to give them, some improvements on their process. So I love this ledger, this grid ledger here. This is another great piece that you've seen in other journals before, but it's a full-page spread of actual sketches or blueprints of a new house. And I'm thinking that this is a 1940s farmhouse that was rebuilt in France. The original one was burned down in a fire. And so this will be the family home that includes a house cellar, its own personal cellar at the bottom. So, and it gives you, the original writing of the architect. Inside you could draw your own designs or add to it. And then on the back side, I'll have to lift this up again. You could see the rest of the designs. So again, that's a fold out, just like the territory map or the terroir map and the hectares. Original stains. Most everything are original stains, but I did clean and disinfect the documents, and a lot of them have been sitting in 100-degree sun outside. So these are Italian pages, also from Roxy Creations. And this is a 1904 postcard from Paris. A lot of the pages, because I do like the messy, fringy, pages that are sticking out from the actual book itself. A lot of these aren't glued down. In fact, they're just folded. So you can unfold them or glue them down to make them permanent tucks. This is an advertisement from 1908. Wines. Red wines and white wines. And again, because the great-grandfather was in the business of growing grapes and making wines. They were also in the business of selling wines. And then these are some of the sales orders from 1908. So original ledgers from Catherine at French Biaudou. Now here comes the majority of the pages from the 1880s. These are the ledger papers that I cleaned up. They're French. I got them from Miab, a brown paper parcel on Instagram, so that the person who owns this can document wines of the world possibly, or wines that they're collecting, or maybe some of their favorite regions of wine growing regions. The word terroir, you'll see the definition a little bit later, but I mentioned it in the other wine tasting journal. What you grow around your vines also helps inform or influence the flavors of your grapes. So this is actually an original postcard from Provence of olive trees. And so again, the brininess and freshness of Provence wines, it's a little fresher, crisper, the higher the elevation, which is what the plots were, the hectares of the map. Those were higher elevations in the Alps of Provence. This is slightly low, within the Alps, but slightly lower, so it generates a little more heat. And some of the wines down towards the ocean or the Côte d'Azur are a little more fruit forward, or pick up on whatever's being planted around them. A lot of pockets made out of these pages, but I haven't permanently glued them down again because I want you to have a lot of extra papers that you could tear and make into journaling cards, or you can make them into permanent pockets, or you could tear them. Some people like their book page edges and journal pages edges to be really torn and tattered and stained, but I thought this book has enough stains already. Coffee stained ledger from Inky Fingers. Original documents with the original pin from 1928. Space for journaling on the back, and beautiful stains and writing. More coffee stain here. This is actually a harder cardstock because this receipt here is fragile. There we go. Original photo of a family picking grapes. So these photos that I've been collecting of pickers, grape pickers and vineyard workers, I've been collecting over the last year and a half with Catherine, French Biaudou. She's really good at finding kits or collections for you if you ask her. Bollettino, this is a bulletin of the prefecture in Italy. Again, the great-grandmother's side is Italian, and they too are growing vines and making wines in Italy. But this just goes over some of the technicalities and the rules of whatever the Provence or province or regions have. Sorry, I might be talking really fast because I'm leaving for Seattle at 7 in the morning, so I'm trying to film this so that I can have it ready for whoever would like to buy it. It's kind of reserved for now, but that person has the first right of refusal. Some of this antique cotton rag ledger that I think these were the ones from Ina at Exquisite Journals. But I like that these look like early plans of what the caves will look like. So the family also went to Champagne to study the caves in Champagne, just to see if it would be something that they could incorporate into their farm or their farmhouse or their property. So these are all original documents, French documents, original stains, but they've been cleaned in case and inspected if they have any mold. I use that UVA light now just to help with the cleaning, just so I'm using too much solution on the pages when I'm cleaning them, except to wipe the dirt. As you know, I like to combine my traditional bookbinding and book preservation techniques that I'm trying to learn. I'm by no means planning on becoming a bookmaster or bookbinding master, but I do like the techniques. So more photos of Champagne caves and wine caves in Rim. Original documents. If you could see how crinkly they are, or feel how crinkly they are, that's the best part of these antique documents. Again, these are the ones from the 1880s and 90s. Original Champagne growers postcards, just because the family was inspired by harvest season in Champagne and how organized it is and still it was and still is. Just kept that in the original postcard protector, just because these antique ones I actually bid on eBay for. I don't always win them, but when I do, I want to protect them. Pieces of antique maps from Sarah Petit Papier, and these Lombard Street carbon copies are original to this 1926 order book ledger. So I wanted to tip in a few of those just so you have a piece of the history of the book, in addition to, you'll see later, some of the binding materials that were used. Ledger from an original or authentic wine merchant in France. Cotton rag book pages from Italy, Rachel. That's the other side of the order book of the wine merchant. And again, a lot of these pockets can be made into tucks or permanent pockets, or you can tear them as strips to use as labels throughout the book, or just to give yourself a ragged edge, even more ragged edge than already is here. This document is from, where's the year? 1924, Italian, a little thinner. Original French documents from 1817. So I think this is the oldest document. I received a packet full of antique original writings from Miab, a brown paper parcel, and I think I'm going to try to buy the rest of her packs, just because the writing is just amazing. And it's on this original cotton rag ledger piece that I got from, I don't remember actually, but I only was able to afford 3 pieces, so I didn't want to cut it. So again, it's just tucked and folded to fit the size of the book, and it's blank on both sides. I used this in the other winemaking journal that I recently made, but I did not bind it into the book. But this one is bound in to the book, or sewn in. You can make pockets out of this, or extra writing space, or writing journaling cards. An Italian, or no, a French document, and some of the blank pages from 1886. Look at their handwriting. And then remnants of French maps, antique pieces that you can use to collage, or because this winemaker and grape grower actually is expanding beyond just selling his own. He's also looking into either buying property in different countries and or making orders for wines throughout the world. So he deals with different countries like Finland, Germany, all the winemaking regions basically. Instead of using my traditional fabrics to combine two separate pages or two different pages before I sew in the leaf, because I didn't want it to get too thick since the spine, which is a hollow spine, so it lays flat the whole time. I didn't want that to get too thick so that we wouldn't get an alligator mouth, but I wanted it thick enough to be able to add these photos and all the different ephemera. So I used pieces of the original 1880s ledger. Just a couple pieces of my art. So this is a combination of the pomegranate skin and a couple of the Tim Holtz oxidized inks, and I just added those as extra tablet writing papers that you could either rip out or just leave here and spin out like this. More of the French writing tablet. Original labels. Actually, there was an envelope in here, I think. The envelope that was way up front. This one here is full of vintage and antique wine labels for you to use. Most of them are probably Bordeaux, a combination from French 34 and Ina from Exquisite Journals. But you can use them to create tucks, pockets, or labels when you're documenting some of your favorite wines or different favorite regions. So that's what's in there. Okay, so artwork, extra labels, onion skin paper for layering, French wine book page from Ina. You saw me use these for the pop-up pages in the other wine book, but I love this green, and some of this green comes from my food dyes that I made, and some of my my own personal oxidized inks, using a little bit of rust added to some of the pomegranate skin, and then some Tim Holtz sprays just to mimic the effect of not only the grapevines but some of the trees, olive trees, citrus trees that are being planted around your vineyards to help with the terroir effect. This is actually a very mixed media loose sketch of the territory map that was created in the beginning of the Alps and Provence. So here's sea level, and this is supposed to mimic the types of grapes that are being planted on the higher slopes of the property, of the hectares that were purchased. So it has east-west sun exposure. So you're still getting some of the heat, but you're getting gravity to get rid of a lot of the rainwater. And so these grapevines will actually struggle because there's less water between the rocks, which actually produces truly concentrated grape yields. This is one of my, abstract art pieces. The watercolor is the pomegranate skin. So a couple pieces of those for journaling, and some scraps if you want to do some labeling or layering. Definition of your Chardonnay grape. Coffee staining, again by Inky Fingers, and the beautiful gold. She has these on her Etsy right now, and her stamping right over the coffee stains. Just beautiful, and it reminds me of old maps, which leads into this Oregon winemaker who's inheriting this book from his great-grandfather, who passed it down to his grandfather and father, is now looking into wine production all over the world, to not only bring in orders for one of his shops in Paris, but also to understand what the different temperatures, different regions, who's making what, and who's the best of best. Only thing is, this list is actually out of date because it does not include New Zealand, who's slowly but surely climbing up into the ranks of top wine producing countries. So this is just printed on photo paper, matte photo paper. Original Lombard Street duplicates, original document that you could actually see through the back, so or it could just be really thin paper. Coffee stained ledger, again more information on wine production yields all over the world, but this is a picture of the Oregon winemaker's dad, not the real one, but I like to think the dad also had some input into this family ledger. I think these are beautiful wine color eco dye prints on heavier cardstock, so I like to make my paper art, not just watercolor or painted art, but this is obviously made in Belgium wallpaper, meant to mimic a bottle of red wine, and it's just a sack that has some extra notepad paper for you for your journaling. The piece that I use to bind two different types of ledger together probably. This is the book owners or the character's family. So this is the grandmother in Oregon who started the vineyard in Oregon. And so she broke off from the family in Europe to start her own vineyard in Oregon. And these are photos of a real family in Oregon who started, I think it's elk vineyards. So again, here are some pockets. This one happens to be glued down, but pictures from the family making wines, new vines on their new property. So this is the Oregon, one of the Oregon properties and farms owned by, Elk Cove Vineyard. This is how I got the idea for the territory map and the viticulture information. And then I thought, based on your favorite regions, you could probably document by region or by country your favorite wines as well. This document, I think, is from the 1700s. I thought I saw the date. This is from Miab, the original handwriting, French handwriting. It's so beautiful. It's actually a very long piece, and I decided to go ahead and bind it just because it's so old and semi-delicate, meaning it still feels good though. I think it has a little bit of cotton in there to strengthen it. A lot of writing space, a lot of grunginess, a lot of, here's one of the few tucks that I actually glued down. More original documents, French documents, cotton rag. So if I take this out of the belly band here, or the tuck, look at those edges. So these French documents, antique documents, are just the best. I know it makes journals and books that I make, a lot more masculine looking, but also a little more on the expensive side, just because they are papers that are rare, not only rare, but harder to purchase these days, just because prices are increasing so much. But we're still here to support all of us small business owners. And if you could give these papers another 200 years to live, wouldn't that be amazing when they find our journals and our books and they find these 1700 papers in here still well preserved and with new lives? So I wanted to keep every strip and every document that was inserted into the 1880s ledger or part of the collection that Miab sent me. Not this tissue paper, but it's like I don't remember if it's a coconut paper. Some copies stained for the map in the beginning, so it's bigger than 11 by 17, where I thought you could trace new maps if you wanted to make new maps of the world of winemakers. But this very rare French letter with extra large handwriting, that's really hard. Miab wasn't able to read it very well, and either can I. But it comes with the original letter, and because it has the black trim, I assume that it's probably a consolation letter after a family member's death, maybe, or announcement. So there's the front page there. And this is a collector's piece from Miab, so this one is the special prize that comes with already very antique ledger. Let's see, where did I get this? Was it over here? Maybe I'll just place it there. It's maybe a letter from his his grandfather. Original cotton rag French papers, and a lot of pockets for you to keep your own ephemera. And then this one, I love these black and white photos. Actually, scraps from the 18s and 1700s. And this document here is a piece of ledger. Oh gosh, where was the year? But look at that tiny, tiny writing and the cotton rag. effect and the natural staining. Where is the year? Let me look. I know it was, oh, here, 1820. So right there, 1820. So again, this is a collector's edition for winemaking. I always use original documents, but I think these are some of the oldest, most rare documents that I've used for a large-scale journal like this. So this one's pretty special. And if it doesn't sell, I'm definitely keeping it. To Make You Love Wine Country. It's different on the back. I got this one from eBay as well. And this one has a tip in. This was the original first page of the bookend papers, just past the marbled page. So I didn't want to get rid of it, and it's actually a perfect writing sheet if you like fountain pen, really absorbent. And I just attached it as a tip in with this antique ledger paper, a remnant of it. And then I like the waterfall effect or look that you could probably sketch out different wines or different lists. But original writing from 1839, again 1821 to 1839. And then this one I think must be the same era, but it's a hue of light mint green. A lot of the the pages that I've been adding, instead of using staples, I just sewed them in using either my waxed cotton or wool cotton, just to mimic how they attach papers in the 19th century, 18th and 19th century. Again, some of the extra tidbits of paper, except for these few precious pieces that I found in different ledgers. Look how old these are. And I've already cleaned them off of with dirt, cleaned off the dirt, and already sunned them just to get rid of any mildew. But again, just instead of actual staples, I used hand sewn staples. And there's a few scraps for you to write in. But look at this is my favorite part. No, I've said that already about the map in the beginning, but everything's my favorite part in this journal. Again, these sheets here, tear them, create extra journaling cards. I thought I had one, I might have to go back, where I left the full length and width of the ledger page, the leaf. So I'll try to find that just so I could show you how big the original was, because the book is massive. Okay, I found it. It was the page that I left full length of the 1880s ledger. So I bound it off center so that I wouldn't have to tear off any pages, but then I just folded the excess here so that you could see the full length of that page. And so a lot of times you'll see that. So the original ledger itself was 15 by 11. So a 15-inch tall by 11-inch wide ledger from the 1800s is what I use primarily as your pages. So this, how did I do that? Okay, so fold it over and then just fold it up to create these unglued pockets here. So anyway, so that's where that was. And then I did want to show off this little tab on the end. It's a blue tab, oh here, which was the actual bookbinding tape of this journal, of the 1926 ledger book. So you'll see a little bit of the mull and some of the spine that they use, and the string that they used to bind the book. So I just left there as a tab. Thought that was some great history. And then there's the back. It's a little flap here, which I did expose. I went ahead and glued down this end paper that used to be on this side to glue down the tapes, just to make sure that the tapes wouldn't move, since I didn't use the longest tapes, bookbinding tapes, and then just glued right over the top of them and reinforced the tops again, just so to help with the weight of the book with all the extra ephemera. But see all that perfect marbling. And there's the back with all the clean but permanent stains and wear on the leather corners, and then the reinforcements on the side. So there you go. So I hope you enjoyed that flip through. It is for sale, but it's currently reserved. Someone has the first right of refusal on it. And sorry about the super fast, unedited version, but I've got to go pack and do some cleanup before heading to Seattle. And then I'll be back to bookmaking and journal making in about 3 weeks, so in early October. See you then. Thanks for joining me.